Welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ryan. I am just watching highlights and podcasts and any show that talks about that game 6 between Denver and Minnesota just over and over again. Any mix that I'm seeing of highlights of Jaden drops 32 playoff career high 32 points, or Ryan, you made a really awesome mix with highlights and kind of slow-mo, kind of a cinematic with John Williams' Star Wars soundtrack over it. Like, I've just been devouring that content all the time because we don't know what's going to happen in this next series, but until it starts, I'm going to live like every day is Game 6, Wolves Nuggets at the end.
Yeah, like you, I enjoyed listening to the kind of the Crash Out Denver podcasts and obviously the local podcasts. For the people that cover the Wolves, both fun in their breakdowns of the series. Seems like people are continuing to do that with some of the Denver podcasts out there. I listen to one. You listen to one show for each of these podcasts. Yeah, the hate listen or whatever. But then for me, I let it go. But I applaud the people that continue to stick with the Denver media and see what they're up to out there. But
yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
No, I'm like kind of ready to let it go, but I keep getting sucked in somehow. Like every time I see a new thread of like, oh, is this guy racist for calling the Timberwolves players cancers, or whatever, where I'm like, I'm not that interested in this, but let me just kind of pull this string and this thread and see how long the string goes. It seems like there's still a lot of people just defending like what happened in that series, or saying that like it was not that it was a fluke, but that, oh, well, the Wolves, this isn't repeatable. The Nuggets are fine. Like, once they get healthy, it's not going to, it's just kind of funny to see that copium from them.
Yeah, I mean, talked about it after the game immediately, but I don't know how you can watch that series and feel like there was any element of randomness or luck. Like, the Wolves were just the better team from start to finish in that series. But yeah, we'll break it down here before we jump into the next round. We'll start with Apex Alpha, our leaders of the pack this week. Use this time to kind of put our final stamps and our takes on the Denver series. But Leo, who is your Apex Alpha for Game 6?
I mean, I think obviously Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert were the MVPs or co-MVPs, whatever you call them. They got all the main headlines, and for good reason. They were really, really awesome. And so I feel that that's kind of been played. Everyone's already understood. Everyone except Shaq has been kind of willing to understand that Rudy is, had a master class on the defensive end, and even on offense, he didn't get played out. And Jaden is like every headline everywhere. So I'm gonna go a little bit off those instead of picking those two. I'm gonna go with TJ Shannon. I mean, I think that Game 6 was so crucial. The Wolves just needed anybody. I mean, they played 8 players, and he was just awesome. Just right from the get-go, he knew the assignment. He played like a vet out there. I mean, it's funny because when they were out there and TJ was out there kind of doing his thing and, with the dunks and the layups and just, going head on full steam, I feel like a lot of casuals who were watching the game just felt like, who is this guy? Like, it's just in Candace Hoopus in the comment section, we used to call it an MPE, a medium player explosion. It's like, oh, well, they just got lucky that TJ Shannon, scored all these buckets he never scores. But most of you who are listening to this pod and been following the Wolves for the last years know that TJ Shannon did what we expected him to do heading into this season. Now, he had some injuries that he was dealing with, and, playing time was kind of yanked around because of that. But the last 3 games in the season, TJ Shannon got a lot of playing time. And TJ Shannon averaged 27.3 points on 47% or 55% field goal percentage, 47 from 3, including 3 threes a game, 7.3 free throws made a game. And so I understand at the end of the season, it's a lot of, tanking teams or teams that don't really care anymore. Or, TJ got way more minutes because Jaden was out for a little bit, or Ant was out and Julius was out, etc. But he rode that momentum, and it's so impressive to see him continue, especially in a game that, in my opinion, that was a winner go home game. Because, I mean, you go back to Denver for Game 7, I mean, it's just not looking great. And so I love watching TJ Shannon play. I feel like he's just a highlight machine. I mean, we know the dunks, and we know his first step, but he's just like such a locomotive. He's just like a guy where it's like, it's I feel like he's an idealized version of like Shabazz Muhammad back in the day, where it's like, Shabazz is gonna attack, and he's gonna shoot it with his left hand, except TJ Shannon's like really good. So yeah, I just really got to give a huge shout out to TJ Shannon for being ready, because I mean, how hard is it? I mean, not everyone's Naz Reid that can just get called off the bench and immediately kind of be in rhythm. I mean, TJ Shannon got called into a spot start, and he played like he's always been a starter. And so yeah, I have to give TJ Shannon a shout out.
Yeah, it was the end of the series was pretty cool. I mean, what was not so cool is Dante and Ant getting hurt. But then in game 4, obviously Io puts up 40 something points and is just immediately steps into Ant's shoes as like the leading scorer for the team. And then Io goes out after game 5 into game 6, and I don't know if the coaching staff had a ton of trust in Terrence Shannon, but once Io and certainly Kyle Anderson were out in game 6, they were left with no other choice than to put Shannon in there. He said that he learned that he was starting basically the day of the game, basically once they knew Io was out, which was when everyone got to the arena, it seemed like. And Shannon filled, just like Io did the game before, or the win before, TJ stepped into the shoes left by Io, and immediately just started attacking the basket. I remember kind of watching some of the clips or the game back. It was just like, and I think Shaq even brought this up either at halftime or post game. It was like, you might want to guard that left hand of Terrence Shannon. And that watching that back, it was like, guys, he can't go right. He's all left-handed. Like, it was insane that the Nuggets have never like picked up on that. Like, they just continued to not be able to prevent him from getting to the left hand. And that was kind of the story of the series, where for every advantage the Wolves had, the Nuggets were never able to respond, and every advantage that the Nuggets have, the Wolves with Rudy and Jaden were able to shut that down. And that was the story of the series. I don't think it was a very good series for David Adelman. It sounds like he will be retained next year. Who knows how much that has to do with they don't want to pay 3 coaches because they're still playing Malone, although even that sounds like the Denver ownership won't have to pay the full extent of his contract because he took the UNC job and some of the money cancels out there or whatever. Yeah, I didn't think Adelman did a very good job, and that kind of flows into my Apex Alpha of Chris Finch, because I thought Finch was incredible in this series and made all the Fire Finch people look incredibly dumb. And I think it's important to point out that even on this podcast, that the nadir of this season, like, I think I criticized Finch and kind of pointed to, like, I personally don't think Finch should be let go, but like some of those performances were that of a team that gets their coach fired. And I was kind of always of the mind of like, let's let the playoffs play out, see what it looks like, because this series was a perfect example of like just classic Finch. You give him and his coaching staff some time to figure out the game plan, and they absolutely hit it out of the park. And then on top of that, once the game plan dissolves because of injuries, they still are able to poke at Denver's weaknesses and find lineups and combinations that work. And Game 6 is a perfect example of that. Finch, maybe rightly so, the entire season has been hesitant to play Shannon, and has certainly been hesitant to play all 3 of the bigs together, Naz Reid, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. And that's what he did in this game. Was a lot. The winning lineup combination was playing the gigantic lineup of the 3 bigs plus Jaden at the what you'd traditionally call a shooting guard, I guess, at the 2. Yeah, I just thought it was an incredible series from Finch, and maybe one of the biggest reasons the Wolves won this series is the coaching advantage they had with Finch compared to Adelman.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about like the coaching of it all, we have discussed Finch a lot on our pod, and he's been a guy that from day one we knew that one of his strengths was like the flexibility. I mean, how often did they talk about early in his career with the Wolves was, he was playing, he was a G League coach for a little bit. He was coaching overseas, and there's constantly guys kind of in and out of the lineup, and he's always been so good at adapting to that. And so when you look at what he did in this first round series against the Nuggets, I mean, it's kind of that same situation. It's almost like he was coaching a G League team in the sense of roster flexibility. Like, guys, you don't know who's available what day, what percentage they're playing at. and he got them to go. Like you said, I mean, he's able to get them motivated, and it's those intangibles. I think so many times you and I mean, we follow the Wolves, very closely, and I would say you and I, we understand the X's and O's probably better than the average casual, but we still don't know all the nuances of the game and what happens like behind scenes in terms of preparation not just on the court but off the court and getting guys ready for that. I don't think it's an accident that Io went off for 43 points. I don't think it's an accident that TJ Shannon went off for 20 plus points in a game clinchy game. I mean, he had them ready, and he has to motivate people differently. I think oftentimes we think it's so black and white. Like if Finch, was talking about benching TJ Shannon for making defensive mistakes, but he doesn't do that to Julius Randle. It's not always the case. I mean, if you've ever been in any type of educational or teaching role, you don't teach every student the exact same way. I mean, there's different ways you have to go about it, and people respond differently. So you can't just be like, oh, well, you got to treat your top, your top performing student the same as your worst performing student, because there's more nuance to it. And I think Finch is so good at that. So when we talk about, they're not we, but when fans talk about, oh well, let's fire Finch. Like, well, who are you bringing in like to that? And I think we don't understand the cascading effect it has on the locker room or in the locker room, especially with some of those star players. And even just when we talk about development, I mean, oh, Finch doesn't play the young guys or whatever. I mean, how many young guys were almost forced into action, but not forced into action, but played well in that action as well too. And so again, there's a chicken and the egg argument there. It's like, oh well, maybe if he played them more, they wouldn't play just sparing minutes when everyone else is injured. But yeah, hell of a performance by Chris Finch. I feel a little bit bad for David Adelman because I think the Nuggets' failure wasn't just only on him, but I mean I don't think he did a great job in comparison to Finch either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I compared Adelman, I don't remember what game, like Adelman to Ryan Saunders a little bit, in the sense of was Ryan Saunders a good coach in his time in Minnesota? I don't think so. I think like the Wolves didn't perform like you would want them to, but I also, in the same hand, I thought he got a raw deal. Saunders, that like the rosters he was given were never going. It was always going to end up the way it did. Like they didn't give him real NBA rosters to work with. And I mean, obviously that doesn't fully apply to Adelman, and Adelman did a really good job, I would say, at the end of last season when they fired Malone, like with a week left to go in the season, and they won a playoff round and made it to Game 7 against OKC. Like he did a good job there. I think just only the Saunders comparison only for this series, in the sense of I thought the players, like you said, the players let them down more than the coaching staff did. And while certainly we both could probably pick out X's and O's here or there or whatever adjustments that needed to be made that weren't. I mean, this is probably true with every sports game, basketball game, that it's always more, you're always better off looking at the players, what they did well or what they didn't do well, versus peeking at the coaches. Because again, like you mentioned, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know what, honestly, it's just really hard to determine if a coach is doing a good job, especially like in a regular season sense. So, but yeah, with Finch, I thought, and to combine ours with Shannon, the day before Game 6 at practice, Finch like just totally ripped into Shannon in his game, and specifically like the defense where he wasn't good enough. And after the game, Shannon was asked about that, and he was like, "Yeah, I heard him," and I don't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, I gotta be better defensively. Before that question, he mentioned being better defensively without even in reference to that clip. So Finch doesn't call out Julius Randle in that way. Maybe you feel, and I don't disagree, maybe people feel like he should call out Julius at times like that, but you coach people differently. And Shannon and certainly Ant are people that Finch can coach hard, and other people on the roster he doesn't necessarily do that with.
Yeah, I think coaching hard is very. There's a lot of nuances and layers to. I mean, coaching hard doesn't mean that you have to, quote unquote, publicly criticize every player the same way. What happens again in the locker room and practice and film sessions, can be different. So you can coach hard, but still coach different per player. So I did want to say one more thing about TJ. He talked about him going left. I think it was either Charles Barkley, or maybe it was Shaq that was saying he's going left and they're not guarding him. It's almost like a mini version of when Julius Randle. It's very obvious. I think every scouting report already knows that Julius Randle is trying to finish left. He's going to finish left every time. His counter is going to be going left. Yeah, they can't stop him because he's so physical. And I think with TJ Shannon, it's a little bit similar where like TJ's just so physical. Like even if they knew he was going to go left, you can try and stop him going left, but his first step is so much faster. He's so much more athletic than Jamal Murray. He can still jump around Jamal Murray in the air and get an and one and finish with his left. And so, yeah, I think that just goes back to the personnel of Denver. They just didn't have the athletes and the physicality to match, a TJ Shannon, in Game 6 where they knew probably what he was going to do and they couldn't stop him. So, yeah, either way, I think shout out to, the role players and Finch. It was just this beautiful symphony of things that worked out for the Wolves that many people didn't believe would go in their way.
Yeah, and I think the whole series was like a proof of concept for this Timberwolves era. That it's not that like they didn't just beat the Lakers last year because of the Lakers were bad. Obviously, the Steph injury after that. I think this series would be a good example of like, no, the Wolves were going to win that Golden State series even with Steph's injury. Obviously, they lose game 1, but like I still feel confident that they would have came back and won that one. Or like it wasn't just. I think there's like a lot of excuses. Well, Phoenix is terrible. Denver was hurt 2 years ago. Like the more you stack up these series wins, and I posted this, those are the only team in the NBA right now that have both made the playoffs each of the last 5 years and won a playoff series in each of the last 3. They're the only team to do that. And really the only team that has like, if you widen the parameters a little bit, the Knicks are the only other team that the Knicks have made the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years. So they missed the playoffs once, and they've won a playoff series, one extra shot. They've won 4 straight seasons. And even then, like the first 2 playoff series the Knicks won, they had Julius Randle. And now they have Cat, and obviously like Cat was on the Wolves for a lot of those playoff series. Like I think the Wolves are an incredibly successful organization right now, and obviously they don't have the championship or even the finals appearance to go up against other teams, but like of this basically like the post-pandemic NBA, the Wolves are as successful as anyone. And for a team that went 14 seasons without a playoff berth before Jimmy Butler of all people got them there, it shouldn't be forgotten. And we're about to move on to we're about to move on from this series, but like I hope people did enjoy it. I hope like people enjoyed this series for what it was. Who knows if they win the Spurs series? Obviously they're big underdogs, and we'll talk about Ant's injury, and they're already out Dante, but like enjoy it for what it was. I mean, how many years would we have? I mean, I remember the year they lost to Memphis. I was just like, even like the fact that they got to the playoffs and had a playoff series that they could or should have won.
Yeah.
Like that was awesome. And I just remember thinking like, dude, if the Timberwolves ever win a playoff series, I'm going to be so I'm going to be so pumped. And that's how I felt when they beat Phoenix. Even if it was, you could tell after at the latest game 2 that they were probably in control of that one. It's been an incredibly fun era of Wolves basketball, and it hopefully, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, this is culture setting, right? I mean, that's such a oft-used narrative in sports and word of, oh, you got to set a culture, you got to set a culture. I mean, this is what it is. I mean, this is winning with foundation based on the coach, the main star players. I mean, in this era, you're talking, Ant, Jaden, Rudy, those kind of guys, and there's people, I mean, for you and I, right? I mean, we're old enough to remember, those previous years when they were good or when they weren't good, to now when they're good again, where, I mean, think about the younger Wolves fans, like the teenagers or even the preteens, where they're watching basketball and getting into it first time, and this is the only Wolves they know. They don't know the Wolves before this. And then, I mean, this is what they're going to expect is like, this is great. And I think players who come in here, whether it's Julius Randle or Dante DiVincenzo or Ayo, I mean, these are guys that are joining and they're experiencing that culture that's been set by the foundation of the coach and the front office and the players on this team. And I think that's what's really going to sustain a lasting, basically plan for success. I think as we move forward from here, we think about like, we're going to look back at the time we've talked about this. I hate to always be that guy, that old guy, like, oh, you don't want to forget, you want to know when you're in the good times before, they were the good times kind of thing where, you look at Phoenix, back then when they didn't win a championship with the Steve Nash 7 seconds or less. But I mean, that was an incredibly, incredibly successful time for them, an era for them. And it was so much fun. I mean, I wasn't a Suns fan, but I really enjoyed their games back then. And I think, no matter whether or not they win a championship or not, I mean, this is going to be a time that we should really relish and not take for granted, for sure. I think when they similar to you when they beat the Suns in that first round, 3 years ago or whatever it was, 2 years ago. That was emotional for me too. I was like, it was that long ago that the Wolves won a first round series, a
20
playoff
years.
series. Yeah, exactly. It was so long ago. And then the next year when they beat the Lakers, that was incredibly emotional for me too. Just based personally on my things. And then this year, I mean, I don't want to say it's as emotional as the Lakers series, but just based on what happened, losing Ant, losing Dante in the first round, being the underdog, and literally throwing together guys that are just off the bench, haven't played main rotation minutes into starters, and for them to win that's an emotional series as well too. So I'm like basking in it, and for good reason. I hope if you're listening to this, you continue to bask in it as well too.
I think it's undoubtedly a top 5 moment in Timberwolves history, especially if you just like the series as a whole. Obviously, the two Game 7 wins to go to the conference finals, I think, are undoubtedly one or two. And then I might put this one third. I really, it's up. I mean, what are the other? I think the other nominees would be like
sweeping the Suns, maybe like
sweeping the Suns, because it's like it was the
first of the series, yeah.
And then next, I would put like their first ever playoff series, coincidentally, also against the Nuggets, in a baby Carmelo Anthony. But even then, like they were the 1 seed against, right? They were the 1 seed against the 8. Like I don't think like that moment really carries that specific moment carries that much weight, because it was and should have been like a foregone conclusion. So I think I would put this one third. I really believe that. Especially because like the Phoenix win does get overshadowed a bit by the Denver series following it. I don't know. It's hard because like and this is true, the Phoenix series, like the fun gets, like the real big moment gets split between 6 and 4. I think, like those are the two big games. But if you're just going like, if you're going moments and you're able to like combine, I think it's third behind the 2 Game 7s. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at it like now, we're like, oh, we know who TJ Shannon is. We know who Jalen Clark is and all that. But I mean, we're going to look back at this, Ryan, like fans, and maybe when you and I are old and we're not watching basketball anymore or whatever, there's going to be kids who look back as like, wait, who did the Wolves play when they won that first round against the Denver Nuggets? Like, who is this Jay Clark? Who is B. Highland? Like, who are these guys that played a couple minutes like off the bench? And it's like, wait, you mean Anthony Edwards did not play in the last couple of games of that series? Or like, it's kind of crazy to look back at this and see how improbable it was for us to win this series. Like, wait, Jokic was on that team and he was healthy and they lost in 6 games? Like, it's gonna be kind of crazy.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what Shannon. I mean, he had objectively a very poor regular season, and injuries played a part of it, but I would probably say not all of it. Same thing to a lesser extent with Jalen Clark. Really hasn't had a lot of success this regular season. Was awesome in the playoffs, and maybe that means more. But let's wrap up the talk of this Denver series with our praise of the week. Leo, who did the Wolves make their prey?
Christian Braun. He's become public enemy number 1 or 2 in Denver, I think. I mean, everyone's been really pissed off at him. They signed him earlier in October this season, to a 5-year, $125 million contract extension. So that means this is year 1 of 5 on this contract that he has. And he averaged 8.3 points on 41% shooting from the field. And most memorably in Game 5 in their win that they had back at home, he had a dunk where he hung on the rim. I think he was in transition. As he hung, he kind of pointed at Jaden McDaniels, and the Nuggets like, oh yeah, in your face, Jaden McDaniels. Like, we got you. That was one of 15 shots that he made in the entire playoff series. In 6 games, he made 15 shots. Jaden McDaniels in Game 6 alone made 13 shots. He like nearly matched that in one game that Christian Braun did in his entire series. And I point that out because Jaden McDaniels a couple years ago signed a 5-year, $143 million extension. So when you look at those and you compare them next to each other, I mean, you're paying Jaden a little bit more than like $3 million a year to have a guy like Jaden McDaniels, while Christian Braun, for the foreseeable future, unless someone's going to try and offload or pick him up on some kind of salary dump or something, he's going to be there for a while. I'm not saying that this is all Christian Braun's going to be, but he was just kind of completely invisible from this. And I think I picked him as my play of the week before, not just because he kind of has a punchable looking face, but because he's had a lot of moments where he's quote unquote like dunked on guys and like pissed off guys. And he's really like taunted, and he's just one of those like irritants. I feel like they probably feel that way about Jalen Clark. Like Nuggets fans feel that way about Jalen Clark. Oh, he's just such an irritant. He's like always there, kind of getting up in people's grill, and I feel like that's Christian Brown, and he just really underperformed, and his own fan base has turned on him.
Yeah, and I think it is important to point out, like, from what I understand, he's been hurt pretty much the entire season, and so that I'm sure held him back. But like the point I agree with you with was in Game 5, he has like the only solid game he has in this series, and he dunks and points at I believe Jaden McDaniels, and I thought at the time like that's you guys got punked last game in Game 4, really punked this entire series by this Wolves team, and you're front running and pointing at people down 3-1 in the series, about to be down 3-2. Obviously, they win that game. And then just don't back it up at all. Like, that's the thing. Jaden McDaniels talked his talk, right? He talked his shit. And immediately backed it up in games 3, 4, and 6. And Christian Brown in this game 5, does the same stuff. Like, if Jaden did that, we would not blink an eye. But then, unlike Jaden, just doesn't back it up at all. And that was the story of the entire series. Like, dude, it was just two teams going in opposite directions in terms of their culture, like you mentioned that buzzword. And my play of the week was the entire Denver Nuggets, because I just thought the Wolves as an organization, as a franchise, as everything, just punked that organization. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be giant moves in terms of past the roster, but I imagine the roster is going to look a lot different next year. I don't know. It kind of like we talked about earlier, listening to their podcast or whatever, it does sound like there's a good chance that like one of Aaron Gordon or Jamal Murray is going to be traded. And obviously the Wolves were far more injured, but like not having Gordon was important to them, obviously, in the same way Ant and Dante, of course. I think it'd be a mistake to trade that guy, but also if he's not healthy, what does that mean? In a vacuum, I don't think it'd be smart to trade Jamal Murray. You're probably not going to get the requisite trade back, but like it's also like they have to change something. And that's a credit to the Wolves that for the second time in 3 years has just absolutely stomped out this team's path. I think 2 years ago was probably more frustrating for them because that team could have actually won the title. And at the very least, I think the Nuggets themselves proved that they weren't championship material in this series, and obviously maybe part of that is injuries, even to Jokic. Probably, I would guess, is not 100% healthy, but neither is Ant, neither is Nas. So the Nuggets should have won this series, no matter how you slice it. The Wolves had less than 3.5 healthy games in this series. Maybe no healthy games in this series because Ant was never really looking like himself this entire series, and the Wolves ran away with it going away. So I couldn't pick just one person. I singled out the entire Denver Nuggets roster.
Yeah, I might as well put the media in there as well too. No, but yeah, I mean with the Denver Nuggets, I mean it's something where it's funny. I see so many fans still talking in that same story, like Tim Connelly put this team together to beat the Denver Nuggets. Like you can't say that anymore. Like you could have said that maybe the 2 years ago when they played them and 1-7. You talk about they had like two bigs to go up against Jokic. It's like okay, well this year they had one big going up against Jokic, like straight up 1-on-1. I mean I think it's just really funny to hear fans still trying to cope with it. And yeah, the Nuggets. I am curious to see what happens. Yeah, like you said, whether it's Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, or at the very least, I mean, Cam Johnson's one or probably two of those players are probably not going to be on the roster next year. And a lot of that is because they want to pay Peyton Watson. And it's easy for them to be like, oh, well, Peyton Watson is innocent from, this kind of no-show that they had because he literally could not play in this series. And so they're going to pay him a lot of money. They're going to have to make cuts. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year. Because if you think about what the Wolves did to the Nuggets, imagine if the Nuggets had to play the Thunder like later on. The Wolves are not the only test that's stopping the Nuggets. Like obviously, the Nuggets went to 7 against OKC last year, but the Nuggets. I mean, you could argue that the Thunder maybe are a better team this year. I mean, barring Jalen Williams' health, but either way, I mean, there are many other teams that the Nuggets have to worry about other than just a zombie Wolves team that beat them. So yeah, the changes for sure are going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, as fun as that Denver series was, I think it's time to put it in the past. Maybe in the off season we can go back and do a retrospective or something, or I'm sure we'll do a season recap pod, and that this playoff series will be a part of that. But let's move on to the next round where the Wolves take on the Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. Going to be an incredibly different series, obviously in terms of player personnel. The Wolves are big favorites to lose the Nuggets series, and they're even bigger underdogs in the San Antonio series. Although I will say, our first topic here is about Anthony Edwards' health. He was upgraded to questionable for Game 1. I was under the assumption that Games 1 and 2 would be absolute no-goes for Ant, and maybe that is still end up what happening. Maybe that is still ends up what happens, but it seems like Ant is in a good place with his health, and at the very least, for what it's worth, Vegas seems to be buying into it. The Wolves' series price to win this series kind of retroactively fell a lot closer to where I would where I would have assumed it would have been. I was shocked to see how big it was, but obviously the injuries play a big part in that. And the Wolves title odds have gone to levels that you would assume that it would be. They're obviously behind OKC and San Antonio, and even the Knicks, and I would assume that the Pistons and the Cavs out east, just because those teams are going to have a much easier time getting to the finals, and the Wolves have to go through both OKC and San Antonio. But like the Wolves were like way behind the Lakers, and that made no sense to me because the Wolves, I think, have shown that they're a better team than the Lakers, especially given the injuries and Lucas. But all that said, the big news is Anthony Edwards is questionable for Game 1. My guess still is that he doesn't play in Game 1. They said 2 weeks when he first got hurt, and it's been a week and a half. So like, I still am dubious that he's going to play, but the dude's Wolverine. Like, we all know that. Like, the dude just recovers, and he put out a video today on his social media. I will say, if people go to, I marked down the timestamp in Ant's video here. Everyone should go to the 4:54 mark. There is an absolutely brilliant question at that point. Spoiler alert, it's my question. But it shows Ant's been working incredibly hard, and Finch said Ant is week to week. That was either yesterday or Friday, and it seems like he's on. At the very least, it really seems like he's going to be back during this series. My guess is Game 3 or Game 4. But yeah, the question after that is what version of Anthony Edwards do we get? Because with the runner's knee, he clearly wasn't 100%, so I'd imagine he's still not 100%. But even if he's not, I think just his pure spacing and what he was able to give them even in the Denver series would be helpful against the Spurs.
Yeah, it's I did notice. I was like, hey, I know that voice when I watched that video. That was pretty cool. It's always awesome to kind of see when we randomly show up in those things there. But yeah, I mean, it's so crazy to think, because when that video dropped this morning from Ant's team, I mean, I think it was on all social medias. It was out, and I in some of my group chats and private Timberwolves like group chats, I had mentioned like, I don't think Ant's team would put this out if he wasn't coming back sooner or later. And obviously, yeah, maybe it's just content, maybe he's getting views, maybe he's just trying to inspire some hope or whatever. But either way, I mean, I think David Hines, the voice that was talking a lot, and he is the VP of Medical Operations and Performance, talked about how, okay, well, Ant's still kind of, week to week right now, but he's been working really hard. And I know some people took it as if he meant like week to week from today, but it's like, well, no, that video was obviously recorded earlier in the week, and so it was probably last week, obviously probably shortly after the injury, where he was recorded saying that. And so I think some people try to temper those expectations, but again, when John Krasinski kind of made that report or sent out that tweet on social media that Ant has been upgraded to questionable and not doubtful, I mean, that's what is like kind of giving a lot of like inspiring hope. Like, this is Willis Reed coming out, baby, like out the tunnel. We talked about this last week in our podcast. This is right when Ant had just gone down with the injury. And I kind of said tongue in cheek, but kind of half seriously, I was like, hey, look, like glass half full. This gives Ant a chance to rest his knee, for a week or so. Maybe stretch out the series a little bit, and then maybe he'll come back and he'll be better because he got time to rest the real problematic knee, which is that right knee, runner's knee that he had. And I also talked about Giannis's recovery from basically the same injury in 2021, I think it was 2021, 2022, and Giannis sprained his hyperextended his right knee even worse than Ant did, it looked like. And Giannis missed 2 games and came back to the NBA Finals. Now, this is not the NBA Finals. You should always exercise caution when coming back to a knee injury like this. But Ant, if he comes back on game 1, he would have missed 2 games, just like Giannis, which is really crazy. Again, I don't want to get too worked up and get ahead of myself and say, like, all right, he's going to play. But I mean, him being out there is going to be so important either way. Just the attention he's going to command out there. And we saw, even when Ant was clearly not 100% before that injury at the beginning of the series, he was still making impact, on certain ways, on straight line drives, going up for blocks. He could still be effective. That's just how insane of an athlete that he is. He's just, David Hines said that in his things, like not David Hines, Robbie Sika, I think it was, that talked about it in the videos. Like, he's never met another athlete that has like been this impressive physically, and the way that he takes his body and his recovery and his performance seriously. I think a lot of us think about Ant, think about him being silly and eating fried chicken and McDonald's, all that type of stuff that he loves to eat. But I mean, very clearly, the guys who are in charge of the medical recovery and all that type of stuff, performance, they all seem to have the same message that Ant is a dude that takes this very, very seriously. I think if we didn't believe it before, it's time to believe that. Pun not intended with his tagline with his Adidas shoe, but we gotta believe that.
Yeah, and I think there's been a very Minnesotan response to Ant potentially playing sooner than later, which is there's consternation about him being out and their chances of winning the series, obviously, with him out. And then the minute he's potentially coming back, people are like, well, I don't know, is this a good idea to rush him back? And they have a ton of information. They are just as incentivized, far more incentivized to make sure Ant is healthy for the rest of his career, for next year, for this, all of that. If there was an outside risk of him injuring himself further, they wouldn't let him play. They're not, they have so much information. They're really not going to do that. And from what I understand, similar to the runner's knee, this isn't the type of injury that, on the flip side with Ayo Dosunmu's calf injury, the hyperextended knee is not necessarily something where you're really putting a giant risk on other parts of your body by going out there. It's going to be a lot of pain management. It's going to be a lot of swelling management. It's making sure that he can get the correct lift on his jump shot, something he didn't really have in the early parts of that Denver series. If go back and watch, a lot of those missed threes were short. To me, watching him in person, I thought the lift on his jumper, and this was before the hyperextension, I just wasn't quite there, or he didn't have the right balance between overcompensating for it on his jump shot. So if he's healthy, he should play. Or if he's healthy enough to go out there and give it a go. I don't see why not, but I'm going to continue to, I would just be very curious to see what state he's in, if and when, it's going to be when he gets out there. And if it is game 4, which I think I would have predicted before this, if it is game 4, it's it'll be very interesting to see if the Wolves can avoid going down 3-0. Cause I think if the Ant missed any game Ant misses the series, if you're somehow able to win any game, I think would be an accomplishment against any second round playoff team, but especially the Spurs team.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the cautiousness of him returning from injury. I mean, the same could be said, if not more so, for Ayo. I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier with his calf strain. I mean, this is something that we've seen. Trigger warning. I mean, the Achilles injuries that some of the other players suffer, especially Tyrese Halliburton, Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I mean, he had a calf injury, and that is directly correlated to Achilles tears. And so you don't want to mess around with that. I mean, the last thing you need other than Dante tearing Achilles is Io, suffering some type of Achilles injury himself. And so I think Finch did talk about it. So when you're listening to this, it was Sunday morning press conference availability. Finch said that Io did participate in all parts of practice, and it was a medium intensity practice. So he's still day to day moving forward. But that is a good indicator that he is kind of out there moving around. And, we'll see. But that is something, like you mentioned, where, Ant's knee injury maybe might not lead directly to another injury. But, Io's maybe a little bit more different with that soft tissue. So we shall see. But it is good to hear that the Wolves are getting a little bit healthy with the extra time that they, bought themselves, being able to finish the Nuggets in 6.
Yeah, and I did hear for Game 6 with Io that it was a tough decision for them and the team. He wanted to be out there, but obviously with those calf injuries, you understand the risks. And I thought, without knowing any information other than the injury reports that everyone sees, I thought they made the right call. Sitting him down. Obviously, you have the hindsight of them winning that game, and it's easy to say that now. But I was like, if it's a tough call, then I don't think it is. Then I think you just got to sit him, because you just can't risk sustaining another injury. And I thought they could have, if they would have lost that game, I thought they could have won Game 7. I didn't think that was out of the. I just didn't think Denver didn't have it. And so if they were able to put pressure on Denver in a Game 7, I think they could have won. But obviously they didn't need it. But let's break down some of the X's and O's in this series. The biggest difference, obviously, between these two teams is the defensive side of the court and Victor Wembanyama. And I think it's like, setting aside the health, the biggest obstacle the Wolves have to overcome is Wembanyama and his rim protection, because this will be the first time in Rudy Gobert's life he's not the best defender in a playoff series, which is crazy to say.
You're talking about Jaden McDaniels is going to be the number one defender?
Exactly. But yeah, Wemby is... Look, Gobert is one of the best, if not, you could make the case like the best defensive player in the history of basketball. And he might, in that sense, might be outgunned in this series, because Wemby, rim protection-wise, is where he's the best rim protector in the league, and the best rim protector maybe in the history of basketball, because of his length and his height. And that is going to be the big thing to me, is that while the Denver series is about getting to the rim, they don't got anyone down there. Go, push, just, you saw it with TJ, like, just go right to the rim. I think this series, for the Wolves to win, in my opinion, is going to have to be the opposite, because you're not going to be able to just get to the rim with ease. There's going to be a 7.5 foot French dude standing down there ready and willing to block your shot. So I kind of think it's going to be two things to me. And the first is just start bombing threes. Like I to me, that's the biggest thing you can do, is just start shooting threes, especially as the underdog, and just hope the variance kind of goes your way. And that's where not having Dante is going to be a really tough blow, obviously, in plenty of other areas too. And the other one is push the pace, is beat Wemby down the court. That's really the only time you're going to get any looks at the rim. And then I guess my third thing would be, it was a legacy series for Rudy Gobert in the Denver series, and I'm just kind of wondering if the Wolves are going to have enough offense with him on the court, because if Wemby's just able to sit near the rim and ignore Rudy, then it's just going to be really, really hard for the Wolves to score. So I think this is and why I think I'm really excited about them getting past Denver. Was like, I want this roster and this makeup to be stress test as much as possible. And Denver wasn't able to do that. It's credit to the Wolves that they didn't, like, the cracks in this roster never had to be pushed. But I think whether they win or lose this series, we're going to see, does the Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert combination work? Does Rudy Gobert, even with his incredible defense, can you get enough offense out of him on the court to win at a championship level? Obviously, we already know you can make the second rounds, you can make the West Finals, but like, can you beat a team as good, a 60-win San Antonio team? All of those questions I think will be answered in the San Antonio series, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
It'll be interesting to watch for sure. I really like the Spurs team and just the way they're built. I like a lot of the individual players there, and so I think it's less personal. With I feel like Jokic is a little bit more of a, I don't want to say flopper, but I mean he is, and there's a little bit more annoying personalities I'd say on the team. Why I just like the Spurs players. But talking about the threes though, I did kind of look this up as well too. So they played Portland in the first round, beat them in, I think it was beat them in five, right? And Portland was bottom two in 3-point percentage and top five in 3-point attempts in the playoffs. So they took, basically that means they took a shit ton of threes and they did not make very many of them. That was basically according to plan. I mean, Portland in the regular season were bottom three in 3-point percentage and top three in 3-point attempts. So the Spurs just, go shoot it. Go ahead, Scoot Henderson. Go ahead, Drew Holiday. Shoot those threes, baby. And now the Wolves are a little bit different. Now, looking at the playoffs, the Wolves are bottom five in 3-point percentage, bottom five in 3-point attempts, and that makes sense. With Dante out, with Ant out, I mean, those are two of the best 3-point shooters in the entire NBA when healthy, and so that really hurts. I mean, look at the regular season, the Wolves are top six in 3-point percentage, and just kind of middle of the pack in 3-point attempts. I think they were 16th or something like that. So with Ant coming back, that would be really huge. Now, again, is his jumper going to be ready? That'll be another thing, but I do think, yes, there is some opportunity for them to bomb away from three, and like you said, maybe variance is in our favor that time. But in my opinion, when talking about Wemby and the rim protection, call me crazy, but I feel like the best defense against Wemby's defense is offense, is going at him, get him off the court. Like, I know it's easier said than done, but attack him, test him. Put Julius Randle on him, and Julius is great at drawing fouls. Like, I'm sure Wemby's going to block him a lot. Wemby's going to block everyone a lot. He's going to have a couple games like, well, why did you shoot that? But like, you have to test him. You can't, in my opinion, you can't just go away from him saying, all right, well, the rim is off limits now. The paint is off limits now. Like, you have to go at him, and you put him in foul trouble because he will be a mismatch issue on the other end of the court when the Spurs are on offense as well too. I mean, the Wolves, as much as I love Jaden, as much as I love Rudy, I don't know if there's a single player in the NBA that is just physically built and has a motor to be able to stop Wemby one-on-one, even at his infant form right now, as I would call it, before he's, fully evolved and, kind of bulked up. And so, you kind of have to go at him, in my opinion. And again, it's going to be mixed results. It will look silly sometimes, but you have to do it. You have to test them. That's just my opinion on that. And so, I think TJ Shannon, Io, guys like that got to get to the rim if they're in the game. Even Jaden, get in there. But I do think that it has to be a good Julius Randle series. And I know that's kind of scary. I mean, Julius wasn't great in the first round. He wasn't terrible in the first round either. But Julius, I think we all know from the regular season, there's that meme that goes around, or that gif that's going around of Julius kind of rubbing his hands together like Birdman, looking at eyeing Wemby up and down, before the game. And that's the game where, in my opinion, was, one of the highlights of Julius Randle's defense in his whole career so far was that one possession where he just kind of bodied up Wemby when he had the ball in his hands and eventually drove him out of bounds. That's the kind of play that we're going to need from Julius. Like, test Wemby, man. You are built physically different than him. He's taller than you. He's going to block your shot, but you have to test him. So that's my key, I feel like, what the Wolves got to do.
Yeah, and I'm really focused on the offensive end of the court for the Wolves, and it's not to say that I'm going to say, like, I'm not worried about Wemby on offense. And I say that not to mean that he's not going to have a good series offensively. He obviously can. He's a really good offensive player, but it's not like the type of offense where where Jokic pre the series, I would have just I don't know what the Wolves are going to do. I think the Wolves have defensive options for Wemby. You mentioned, I think Julius Randle should guard Wemby a lot.
My God, is that Johan Berenjay's music I'm hearing?
I don't think so. We're triple. If you remember the old triple Dirks, triple French, triple
that's right.
triple baguette. I think even just like if you're not able to get fouls on Wemby, but just beat him up. I think that's within the scope of the rules. Obviously, beat him up, be physical with him, make him hate guarding a load of Julius Randle, because even you're not going to find a guy tall enough to guard Wemby. He doesn't really exist.
There is a guy on the bench. There's a guy on the Wolves bench
He's been running scout team Wemby. If you've seen the practice pictures.
Talk about Rocco Zikarsky, obviously 7'5", 19-year-old rookie.
But yeah, Wemby will obviously have a good series offensively, but it's just, can the Wolves score enough given his presence down there? And like I said, it's where they're going to miss Dante the most. I think Dante would have been a real big part of this series, but like they did against Denver, they had other guys step up. I guess the other thing which I've kind of hinted at is just the insane difference in playoff experience in this series. This is for a lot of how many Harrison Barnes is the only guy on the roster that has played in the second round of the NBA playoffs, and De'Aaron Fox is the only other guy that had played in the previous playoffs before this. And that's not disqualifying them to win this series. They absolutely can. I just think that for a lot of these guys, if the Wolves are able to get this to like tied 2-2, or even if they're like up 2-1, if the Wolves are up 2-1 after 3 games or something, there's a more than solid chance that like the Spurs just take control, given the Wolves injuries and everything the Wolves just kind of take control of this series. That even if the Wolves like force 6 games where it's just kind of like, yeah, the Spurs never felt that pressured. They were kind of in control of the series the entire way. That's a realistic outcome of the series. And if that's the case, I don't think the playoff experience will matter much, because like it won't matter in game 1. It just won't. Like it'll be a big moment for all those guys, but it's like, if the Wolves can fight hard enough and win enough of the minutes to get to a point where the Spurs go, oh, crap, we might lose. And it's far from a guarantee. Certainly, if Wemby is as good as we all think he is, he will. Look, everyone can have bad series. LeBron has had a bad series. We just watched Jokic have a bad series. So you don't put it past anyone to have a bad series. But like, if Wemby is as good as we think he is, like that won't matter either. Those nerves will roll off his back and they'll win. But like for a lot of the guys, especially the young guards, if those can make this series close, I really do think like the farther this series goes with the game count remaining close, that's good for the Wolves. Where for the Spurs, I mean, maybe this is just like hopeful thinking. Like if you can just make the experience gap matter, because a lot like I think OKC 2 years ago was a good example of this. They were better than that Dallas team. They should have beaten them, and they didn't. I think them being so young and inexperienced is a big part of that. And so I think the Wolves have a real opportunity to do that again. What Dallas did 2 years ago, and make the experience gap matter. And then past that, next year, this will not be a talking point anymore for the Spurs.
Yeah, I think the experience thing is interesting. I do think it is huge because so much of playoff basketball is so much different. I mean, the Spurs were playing a Blazers team that, was kind of game. I mean, they beat them in game 2, and game 3, Wemby goes down, and I mean, you could argue
and
they
deserve credit for winning the 2 games in Portland with Wemby out the first one and coming back for the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, they're just a far superior team on paper than the Blazers are, and I think that is something where the Wolves are not they're not your grandma's 6 seed. Like they're not the team that just comes in. They're like, oh well, this is kind of like a easy gentleman sweep here for them. And so I do think the experience will be helpful with that. Like you said, I agree with you. The longer the series goes on, the more advantageous it might be for the Wolves. But I mean, look at who is kind of, I guess, kind of pushing the buttons, as you could say. Like who's Dylan Brooksing it up, for the Blazers against the Spurs, and it was kind of Scoot Henderson, of all people. And Scoot Henderson, like he had a good couple games, but I mean he's not by far like a star or someone that I think would really get under their skin. I think you have to make it grimy. You have to get into their skin because, again, on paper, I will say this. I mean, I like the Spurs team, and I do think they have a lot of advantages on their team as well too. Given the Wolves' injuries and just not their health, even if available. And I look at players like Mike Conley, for example. Like he was able to get thrown out there, run around. He could chase around Jamal Murray. Like Jamal's primarily a perimeter-oriented player, and he's not as physical. Instead, now you're going to be asking Mike to start and have to guard a De'Aaron Fox, or has to deal with Stephon Castle, or even Dylan Harper. I mean, Dylan Harper is 6'5" and very physical. These are 3 guards that are going to be really tough for the Wolves. I mean, De'Aaron Fox has always been a Wolves killer. I mean, Keldon Johnson has always been a Wolves killer. Devin Vassell even has had a great series, regular season against the Wolves. I mean, these are a lot of guys I think will be problematic for the Wolves. Is I think if you look on paper, is not going to be a fun time for the Wolves, and that's why you have to muck it up. You have to make it weird. I think that's, again, I hate to say it, I don't want to put all my eggs in this basket, but I think logistically, I feel like Julius Randle is going to have to be the mismatch, because who is guarding Julius Randle? I mean, Victor Wembanyama, maybe? I mean, other than that, who's guarding him? I mean, old Harrison Barnes, or you asking Devin Vassell to stop him? I mean, like, Julius is kind of a weird mismatch for them, and so he has to go. He has to go. And so, anyways, regardless of the experience, yeah, like you said, next year it will no longer be a thing for the Spurs. But I think the Wolves, especially with Finch at the helm, they'll find some weird ways to get active. I think the guard rotation is much in the Spurs' favor. Especially with the injuries with the Wolves. But then the front court, I mean, look at Nas, you look at Julius Randle. If they're playing at their peak, those are two players that I think the Spurs might have trouble dealing with. I mean, obviously, they still have Wembanyama to kind of throw at one of them, but Wemby can't guard two guys at the same time, and Wemby's going to have to kind of deal with the paint. And Julius, I mean, he hasn't had a good year shooting the three, but if he can hit a little bit from range, especially if Nas has the shot going, then you can kind of stretch it out a little bit. So yeah, I do think the Wolves have to really take advantage of that and their experience.
Yeah, I guess it's important to point out the Wolves did win 2 of the 3 games between these two teams, but as is the case with every NBA regular season, you go through the games, and Wemby missed the first one. The one game that was kind of unmarred by scheduling or injuries, the Wolves did win by single point. Ant hit the game winner there around Wemby, who Julius kind of screened off on the final play. And then the one game the Spurs did win, the Wolves played in Houston the night before and had a 22.5-hour turnaround between games. This was probably the craziest game of the season, maybe shy of the Houston Scott Foster overtime game. Mm-hmm. But the Wolves are down, 20-something points in the first half, and Ant storms back late in the second half, and they come up just short. Ant scores 55 points. No Rudy in that game. Maybe that would be I don't know. I'm kind of dubious of Gobert's impact on this series, just with Wemby the rim protector. But and again, it's always with Rudy. It's always on the offensive end. Rudy will provide plenty of defensive value. But yeah, it goes back to what it's going to be a very interesting series and a stress test for the Wolves, which I think is the best thing, shy of winning the title and a bunch more series. Just try to figure out as much as you can about this roster. But should we go into our predictions, Leo, for this one?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
All right. Well, my prediction, similar to the first round series against the Nuggets. I mean, I said Wolves in 7, and up winning in 6. I'm going to go with Wolves in 6. I think the lack of shot making is going to doom San Antonio. Now, you look at the stats, and the Spurs are number 1 in field goal percentage. They shot 41%, or from 3-point percentage, or 41% in the playoffs. Regular season, they were middle of the pack at 35%. So I do think there will be a little bit of regression to the mean. I mean, the Portland Trailblazers do have some good perimeter defenders, but so do the Wolves. And I do think that the Wolves kind of hang their hat on defense more than Portland does. And so I do feel like that is going to be something that will help regulate things. I think the Wolves will ride the momentum. I mean, the Wolves are better as underdogs, and they're huge underdogs. And you even bring in the fact that Ant might even be good to play the whole series. If that's the case, and I think the Wolves absolutely have a shot to win this. So I'm going Wolves in 6. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think the Wolves have a shot, certainly more than maybe the consensus would think about them. I'm going to go Spurs in 6 just because I think to beat this type of Spurs team, they're going to need just like 100% killer Anthony Edwards series, and I just don't think with his health that he has that in him. But I will say that's pretty much exactly what I said about the Spurs, the Nuggets series, that if they don't have 100% Anthony Edwards, they got no shot. And that was wrong. Now, what I would say is I don't think that the Spurs are going to roll over as much as the Nuggets did, and Spurs have shown to be the superior team to both Denver and Minnesota this entire season. So I don't think the Wolves have had that easy time. But like I said, I think if this series is tied 2-2, I think the Wolves have an incredibly good shot to win this series. Even if on paper, you'd have to win 2 out of 3 with 2 of the 3 games being in San Antonio in that scenario. I think if I was to really project the Wolves without Ant lose the first 2 in San Antonio, they split the next 2 in Target Center to go down 3-1. They, with Ant finally kind of knocking the rust off, they win a surprise game 5, where everyone's counting them out to lose the series, and then they come home and lose the series in 6 would kind of be because in like that scenario, that goes to my point of like the Wolves we'd look back and be like, yeah, they forced game six, but like the Spurs were in control the entire time. But if the Wolves, I mean, with every series, it's kind of like this. If the Wolves can steal one of the two games in San Antonio, that kind of completely shifts the whole narrative for the series. But if Ant's not able to come back and the Spurs kind of put their foot down in the first two games, it'd be on the Wolves then, obviously, to win both at Target Center, which would be tough, but that'll be the fun of it. And at the very least, I'm just looking forward to the series. And if they lose, so be it. We'll reconvene in the offseason and break it down. But like for now, I'm glad we get more Timberwolves basketball.
Yeah, Ryan and I are sticking to the script. I'm gonna predict the Wolves. He's gonna predict the opponent, and the Wolves are gonna pull it out. So we know what we're doing here. We're putting the good jinx out there for them.
Yeah, I mean, I picked against them in the first round last year. I was wrong there. I picked with them in the next round, and I obviously Curry injury notwithstanding, I was right there. So it's like I don't always pick against them. I'm not. This is not a reverse jinx. I'm just going with what I think, and yeah, it's going to be a tough series, but I'm looking forward to what we get. But let's close out with two words. Mine Mile High, just coming off that Denver series, incredibly fun. Fun times. We already talked about it, but like just incredibly, it's crazy to be here with this Timberwolves organization, which really not that long ago, they were as bad of, I mean, they were literally had like the worst winning percentage in men's sports ever. So, for them to be as consistent as like potentially the most consistent team in the NBA over the past 5 years, that's incredibly lucky to watch, and just hope it keeps going as long as possible this year and as long as possible past this year.
Yeah, Ryan, I just pulled up on Wikipedia the all-time NBA win-loss records, and I actually looked at this earlier this year, actually in 2026, and the Wolves currently
the Wolves were bottom of like include the NFL, baseball, like they were bottom of that list.
Well, looking at the NBA, I mean, the Wolves currently, I don't know when this was last updated, are at 42.1% win percentage, which is last, and the Brooklyn Nets are 42.2%. So 0.1% difference. And now, again, I don't know how this is updated, but I feel like I got to check this, every day. I don't think they're including the playoffs. Maybe they are. But next season, for sure, I will be tracking this because it will be a monumentous day where the Wolves are no longer be number 30 on this list. And if we're going how it's going with the Nets, maybe even with Adrian Dabanso or whatever, maybe they're going to take over that 30th spot. So.
Wonder if I believe the Nets are an ABA team, right?
Yeah, I think it's including, because they have 4,000 games played.
So I wonder if you can play with the numbers and either include or disclude or take out the ABA numbers to kind of fit a narrative there. But
yeah,
for the Wolves, it's going to be easier for the Wolves to change their win number than it is other franchises, because the Wolves are going to be on the lower end of games played. Where if you go look at Boston, like Boston could win all 82 games or whatever, and it wouldn't budge, right? Because
they're still first right now at 59.7. But they're 0.1% ahead of the Spurs, so that's interesting. The Spurs have been around for a long time too. So
yeah, I mean, hey, I don't remember when this was, but it was like Tim Duncan had more playoff everything than the Wolves, like more playoff points, right. More, like he had more everything. So if we can get off some of those graphics, and the Wolves have won 5 playoff series in the past 5 years. Even if they lose the San Antonio series, they'll have, in the span of 5 years, they played 10 playoff series and split all 10. Like that's incredible stuff. And hopefully they can win this one and keep going. And who knows after that? But yeah, game one Monday night, 8:30 Central. We'll all be glued to the television.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Wolves haven't been 29th or better in all-time win-losses since Bruce Lee died. So, my 2 words is going to be believe that. I said that earlier as well, too. That is the Adidas tagline for the AE shoe brand. I am an Adidas guy myself, performance-wise, not just because Kevin Garnett and Ricky Rubio were all Adidas guys, too. But, yeah, I mean, you have to believe it. I mean, the Wolves are, I don't want to say the team of destiny, but they are the team that everyone has kind of counted out at this point that is moving on. And, I think not many people believe in the Wolves, especially in those talking head shows and all that. I gotta believe, the Wolves could still at least make this a series. I also believe that literally for Anthony Edwards, what kind of dude is this that is going to be trying to return from this crazy of an injury that he went through just less than a week ago? You have to believe that. I mean, he is the savior. He is the chosen one. He is a guy that, if the Wolves are ever going to do it, it's going to be because of him. And if he's going to return in like Willis Reed fashion in game 1 against Spurs, or game 2 or 3 or 4, whatever game it is, you got to believe that the Wolves have a chance. So my 2 words are believe that.
Yeah. Looking forward to it, even if it doesn't go the Wolves' way. But hey, I think there's a lot of, not everyone, myself included, believe they could beat Denver, and they did that pretty handily. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to being at Target Center hopefully 3 more times, but certainly at least 2 more times. And the crowds were awesome. The Denver series, and you get the weekend series. Bring your moms on Mother's Day to Game 4. Get everyone liquored up for the weekend, and should be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Make sure to tune in. There's going to be a lot of highlights in this game, I feel so.
Yep. But for Leo, I'm Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Get home, drive safe.
Go Wolves.
Ayoo!